This is one of your foundational tools. And like many of them, it seems so simple that people, I think, will go, yeah, I don't know. Like that's not, I do that, right? Or that's not going to make a difference. But when people go out and they practice it, they're like, oh my gosh, this changed everything.
Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm Makena Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. So happy
Welcome
to be back.
We are happy to be here, and we were just reflecting on, it's been a week since I got home, I think, from our retreat in Sonoma, and Gigi just got home a few days ago. And I am still, I finally unpacked 2 days. Yeah. 2 days ago, I finished.
Yeah, I'm still unpacking. Takes a while. But I was gone a couple of weeks because I went and saw the grandbabies before I came home, which was awesome.
Yeah. Same here. It was super fun. September, basically. I can't believe we're already getting into October, and I just decorated my house with all the fall pumpkins and fun fall wreaths and all the things. So
that's today
we're gonna go ahead.
Time of year, right?
I love this time of year. This is my favorite season. So, and then of course going into the holidays, which I'm obsessed with. Yeah. So today we are going to talk about growing love, which is a topic that, Gigi, you are just incredibly brilliant and gifted at. And I'm so excited to share this with our audience.
Yeah, I'm excited too. This is probably my passion in life, right? It's the way I spent a huge part of my career. And it's also one of the themes that was, really present in the Sonoma retreat that we just did. A lot around communication and to just assist women. We did, a lot of role plays and different scenarios in their relationships, romantic relationships, as well as with their children or their bosses. And this kind of work is really, sometimes I think it's some of the most important work in the world, but that of course is because I love doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. But really it's where we see a lot of the big, of course the women have breakthroughs in terms of so many different areas, their clarity, their businesses, everything. But we really see, I guess this is just the area that's kind of left untouched maybe a lot of the times when people are doing other personal growth work or they're working on their businesses. It's like the personal kind of gets pushed to the side. And when we work with people and we do so very holistically and touch into the different areas like we did in our retreat, then all of this comes up, right? The relationship aspect of things comes up, and people with their kids, like you're saying, and their partners and in their work. And so we really saw some big breakthroughs with the women around this topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I always say, I think people just don't know what to do. That's the problem. And, from all of my years, which we'll talk about in a minute, is that, I've spent 3-4 decades here researching, studying, and practicing this. So when you know what to do, it makes a huge difference in terms of plugging up those leaks when it comes to breakdowns in our communication, which affect everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the women have been sharing. We have a WhatsApp chat from the retreat, and a lot of the women have been sharing what has changed in various areas, right? Not just in their relationships, but I wanted to just touch on a couple of the shares and stories that we have heard without sharing any names. Yeah. It's been so fun to hear their celebration since returning home. So one woman said, I have been practicing with my husband, and in turn, he's been doing the same, which we find that often happens. And the other partner will start to reflect whatever you're doing. She said, I feel like something has awoken in me, and we have been able to connect on a deeper level.
That's so nice. Yeah.
And another woman said, I literally used the tools half a dozen times already. This was like 2 days after the retreat, at work and with my son. It was such a different outcome than I've received before. My interactions were so positive today. This will stick with me for life. I feel it. Another woman said, with my kids, all the skills we practiced are working so well. I feel more deeply connected and I am full of joy and gratitude for having all these wonderful people in my life. And another one, I am off this weekend with my beloved husband on a romantic staycation at our favorite boutique hotel. It was initiated by him and I am feeling so loved.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, today is my first full day back home, and I wanted to say that I feel energized and passionate. I have paused, acknowledged, and winded with my son and my husband. Thanks so much for giving us tools and keeping me on track and focused. So we're going to talk about one of those tools, one of those skills that she mentioned there today. But first, I want to really talk about what set the stage for these breakthroughs. Like, Gigi, first, let's get into a little bit more about, your background in relationship and communication work, because it's something we've touched on the show, but I don't think we've gone so deep into your history with this line of work specifically. So tell me a little bit about how this all started and how did you get into teaching about relationships and communication?
Yeah, it's funny because, this was so much part of my life and my work, and especially in Europe, because that's where I had a lot of my fame, and that's where, really the majority of my career has been with my work in Europe. And so a lot of people don't know so much about that. This was really what I did for a long time, right? And so I'll do the short version, but I started in my early days of really going into personal development and working and starting to do workshops. My mentor saw early on that I had a gift for, and also a curiosity around the communication between men and women. I always wanted to make sure everything was fair. And so in that, he said, since you have such a passion here, you really should get out and start working with women. And so he said, you need to put together a workshop and get out there and just see what women need and what they want and what's going on in their communication with men. And through that, see what can you start to create so you can support them. So I did that. My first workshop was called How to Train Your Man, and it was done in Maui, Hawaii. And in that, I got to have the opportunity to work with women and, just like he said, see what were they longing for in relationship and what were their challenges? And then also what was the part that they were playing where they were really destroying their relationships? They had certain shadows that they were doing where they were pushing their partners away, and then also seeing what they craved and what they needed and how they really need to take care of themselves. So I developed my work from there, and that work, a body of work, I taught and traveled for about 15 years. Consistently in Europe, internationally, and other areas. I went to Singapore and other places around the world. And that developed into a workshop called Power Connections. And I taught that for many, many years. And then also I was known in Europe as the Man Whisperer for many years. And what happened is this, through me teaching, and especially teaching workshops for so many years, I started to really build a following. And so I had a lot of press, a lot of people who would reach out to me in Europe because the ideas that I was presenting were very, very new than anything else that was out there. And fast forward, I got the opportunity with a German woman to actually write my book that I'd been writing for years on this topic of communication. And so it got published in Germany. She went out and got 3 offers, and it got published in Germany in German. I couldn't even read it for the first couple years until I had it translated into English.
So she took your work, basically worked with you, and she wrote it in German.
Yeah, she wrote it in German. So she interviewed me. We spent many hours. We would meet. She recorded me. And then, of course, she added, statistics and backgrounds. And, when I did get the book translated, I did see there were some things that didn't quite fit with the way I would say things. And I did translate it into English. It was online for many years as ebooks online. But through this work of this relationships, topic, this is something that I studied and worked with. And again, I saw there was an opportunity at one point that I wanted to also be able to put this into companies, because I had clients that had worked with me. And one particular company was having big issues with the women advancing in the company. And it was predominantly male company. And so, of course, they were blaming their bosses. And so they had a focus group, and they ended up bringing me in, and I worked with the top 80 executive women in that company to work on this issue. Now, the funny thing is, I actually took my How to Train Your Man workshop, and I changed the name to Power Connections. And I went in and I did that workshop in that company, which was unheard of, because this is something like they had never done before. They had never self-reflected, right? Any other kind of workshop they did was, they read a book and did little exercises in the book. And so this was hugely transformational, and it made a huge impact, and those women started advancing right and left. So I took this, and then I actually had some trainers that did it with me, and we went into different companies. I went into JP Morgan Chase in New York, and did a lot of speeches around the US for their company, and many other areas. And then help me with this, Makena. What else should I?
Well, your books were published in, I think, 6 countries in Europe.
I believe my books were published in 7 or 8 countries in 5 languages, because they were published in the German speakings, which was Switzerland, Austria,
Germany.
and Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I just got opportunity after opportunity came to me. And like I said, in terms of articles in Switzerland, Germany, a lot in the Netherlands. Actually worked on a production deal where we were going to do a television show called The Man Whisperer. And it didn't finally get sold, but we worked on it. I signed a production deal and everything. And then also did my work around power couples as well. And so this I have done, it is the heart and soul of what I know, as you know, and I have a certain gift there, but that gift is also very much developed because of my skill set that I've developed through my life and my career. And it's I went away from it in terms of being a relationship coach, because I'm so much more than that. I help people with their businesses, and then also with every aspect of their life. But what I find is this foundational piece is truly one of the most important things, because if you think about it, when there are breakdowns in communication in business and in someone's marriage or with their children, the cost of those breakdowns is absolutely one of the things that affects business relationship, and more than anything. And we've seen this, Makena, you can share a couple maybe ways that you've seen this, but we see it all the time. And so this particular topic is so simple in many ways, but I find that just most people have no idea what to do. No idea what to do. And so we really break it down and make it super simple. And it's complex in the sense of that it takes time to learn, and a lot of practice, and a lot of relearning, I think, for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I just want to say that this has been one of the most impactful things that I've learned from you over the years. And of course, I was raised around these skills and tools, but then also in mentoring with you, and you really guiding me in my life, in my relationship. Sonny, my husband, who we've been together almost 9 years now, in just a couple months, and he credits you with our relationship in many ways, or the quality of our communication and our relationship. And he says that the depth and the communication that we have in many ways is, of course, cultivated from our own connection, but very much also from the tools that I've learned from you and that he's learned from you, and then from watching me do them over the years. And so I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that, because that is truly the best thing in my entire life. And I'm always so excited to share this information, these skills, these tools with other people, because it feels like this secret amazing thing that it's not even, like you said, that it's that complex or something like that. It's just people don't know. I watch reality TV sometimes, and not often, but when I do the dating shows or whatever, I can't remember what it's called, the one where they
blind or something, blind
Love is Blind, something like that. So I'll watch those, and then I watch them get to the part where they actually meet each other and they're like, together, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, hand on my eyes, because I'm like, if they just had a couple of tools, if they had a few skills, it would be such a different experience. And it really is, so powerful. I believe, and I know you do too, that everyone deserves to have deep and loving, connected relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I know this is really your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have a lot of missions, but one of my missions is really to transform conflict into harmony. And I want to do that. And I do it in business, relationships, families, because it really creates this ripple effect of prosperity and then also peace on the planet. I think in my older years, that's something I really want to focus on, is how do we take these type of tools and not only let it support families and relationships and businesses, but also countries. I'm looking at the bigger mission here. So yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to touch on something, which is that for those of you listening, we do have a mostly women audience, but we might have other people listening too. Sometimes we have others. So just know that anyone can really benefit from what we're sharing here. However, we are usually going to talk as if we are speaking to women in relationships with men, because that is the majority of our audience. But you can use these skills in same-sex partnerships, and even, like we said, outside of romantic relationships, with your kids, with your boss, with your coworkers, whoever. So just keep that in mind as we're sharing today. And Gigi, before we go into a couple of the things I have here on our outline, I did want to touch on one or two things from your story. And one is the course, How to Train Your Man. So when people hear that name, they're probably like, oh my God, what? That's a little politically incorrect.
You're 87, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very different time.
Yeah.
But what do you mean by that? How to train your man? And, because I'm sure the women are thinking like, what? And the men are going, ah.
Yeah. Well, the secret is I really train the women. So, but what I mean by that is basically is seeing what you want for women, like really knowing what you want and knowing how to ask for it in such a way that men can win and support you, not get it for you. You both have to work at getting it, but in such a way that they know what you want. Because a lot of times I think men feel they just don't know what to do to please women. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in some ways the course was, again, one of these kind of little, counterintuitive things, because really it got down to training the women to be able to really see what do they want, how to communicate that in such a way that the men feel lit up instead of their lights going out. That's a very simplified version.
Yeah. And so what if the woman says, well, why should I be the one to be trained here? Why should I be the one to take the first steps? It's been, and we're going to talk mostly again about romantic relationships, but this applies in other areas too. So I've been in, relationship with this person for years, and they've done this, this, and this, and they should be the one to bridge this. What do you say to that?
I say that you finally have to take the first step. Be willing to take the first step. And in that, again, it's like when I went into the company and the women said, my boss is preventing me, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, let me teach you a way to, first of all, see what you're doing, and then also start to be collaborative and respond to your boss. And if it doesn't change over time and you really go in there 100%, not like, it's probably is not going to work, but you really go in there and you work at it. If it doesn't change over a few months, find a different boss. Now, I'm not saying, go leave your partner or whatever, but I am saying that somewhere someone has to give. Someone's got to give. And honestly, and some people might resist this, for women, it's easier because we have this ability with receptivity, and we have this ability to be able to really get receptive and really listen. And so we also have this ability to take that first step. Doesn't mean that men don't have the ability. It's just more difficult. They don't know how more.
Yeah, women have a natural gift, I think, around communication.
Yeah, and they do. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a generalization, like you said, and we will make a lot of generalizations, but the way our brains are wired, the way we, through the millennia, were, biologically developed to raise babies and, be more about the nurturing of a family and things like this, it really created a different set of natural gifts and skills, which men have cultivated many as well. But there is this sort of, like you're saying, this natural ability that women have. But what about if someone's like, I've tried a lot of things and he's just not responsive, or they just have a lot of frustration around that, or they feel like, well, he's never going to change. Do you see this a lot with women?
I do. And I say, it's still, if you can sit there and be right about that for the rest of your life, or you can really try, get what I'm saying. And I really show them how. And that's, again, in the program that we have, I go deeper into that, is that, or you can finally just set that aside and say, I'm going to roll my sleeves up here. I'm really going to go for this. I'm really going to go for this. Yeah. Yeah. Is there something else you see, Makena?
No, I'm just remembering one of the women in the retreat last week and how she had a really big aha around that, where she was attached to being right in the situation. And so much of her frustration was built up because she felt like, well, I'm right here and they're not. And how do we make it such that? And so even in the role plays and everything, at first it was challenging for her. But as she continued on and she really, you reflected that to her, would you rather be right, or would you rather basically get the result that you want or have the relationship that you want? And in this case, it wasn't even a romantic relationship. It was a work relationship, right? So it's not necessarily even just there, but in that, when she finally let go and said, okay, I want to get the result more than I want to be right, then it was like something shifted there, something clicked, and the role plays and the dynamics were so different.
Yeah. It's so powerful and so subtle. And I do understand if you're listening and, you're in pain and there's been hurt and there's, years, like you said, but again, it's worth a shot, but you do have to set aside the being right. You finally have to let go of it and just say, who cares who's right or wrong? And this is why I say it's so powerful when we learn how to communicate. And because the same in a parent-child relationship, the parent wants to be right? And when you learn that skill of putting it aside and seeing what result do we want here? Do you want harmony in your relationship? Do you want to be connected? Then being right is never going to get you there in a million years. Yeah. But finally saying, I do, and I'll do what it takes to do that. And that takes courage, and it takes courage because you might get rejected at first. And from my experience, and I have a lot of experience, is when women start to do it, or anyone for that matter, I would say probably 98% of the time, it hugely changes things. Yeah. It's a pivotal shift. Yeah.
I would agree with that. And I think it's important to describe what changes for people before we get into even sharing a skill here with the listeners, is what develops in the quality of a relationship. I can speak to this a little bit for myself, is like, there's this, when using these skills has allowed me to bridge a certain kind of connection with Sunny, where we had a great connection from the beginning. We fell in love very quickly. We knew that this was it and we wanted to be together. But the depth of the connection and really this feeling that we're on the same team and we've grown together that way, that we're all in on the relationship, we're on the same team, and that when conflict arises, we have tools for how to move through that. But even I'd say we have a very low level of conflict in our relationship in general. And that is because we have these day-to-day communication skills where we know how to interact with one another in such a way that there's, like you said, a lot of peace, there's a lot of harmony, there's a lot of collaboration and connection. It feels like, yeah, and there's a lot of trust, I would say, a huge amount of trust, especially now, 9 years in, that took time to develop. But that's often, I think, when people are having a lot of conflict, is there's trust has been broken in some way, or they felt like they're off of each other's team for a long time, like they're kind of on opposite sides of something. And so it may seem like there's not a lot of possibility for that again, or you can't even imagine what that would feel like, or that your partner would be on board with that. But I just want to say, like Gigi said, that so much of the time, the large majority of the time, if you're really willing to get in there and set aside kind of being right, or, needing them to be the one to take the first step, that there is the possibility to have baby steps in a different direction. And over time, those baby steps add up huge in terms of the quality of your day to day. And relationships impact everything. I mean, you talk about that, right? Mm-hmm. What's the example you always give about that in terms of going to work? And
yeah, I always say, if you wake up in the morning and you're feeling great, and then you get up and you're in the kitchen, your partner comes in and says something, and then all of a sudden you're in a little fight and you feel bad and they feel bad, and then you go to work. And when you go to work, that cloud is over you, and then you talk to your employees or you talk to your boss, and that energy is in you and it clouds everything. There feels, there's a bit of you're not completely yourself. And then, you go home and you're frustrated if you have children, and you still have that agitation in you, you put it into your children. And so the cost of it is we don't see because it's invisible, and we don't see it because we don't see the immediate impact. That's the other thing too, is people, their relationship breaks down in communication, and then they just give up, and then they kind of, don't talk to each other more and more, and then they get more separate, and then they're probably just a little polite, and then they get further and further, and then intimacy breaks down, and before long they have no connection whatsoever. And this all started, here's the crazy thing, from being misunderstood.
What do you mean by that?
Somewhere along the line, there's a fight, somebody feels misunderstood, and somebody takes something personally, and it doesn't get handled, and then it goes into everything. Yeah, people make decisions, they decide something in their mind. Oh, she doesn't understand me. Oh, he, doesn't get me, or whatever. And then that builds. It's like people start to build evidence. And that's where the skills that you've learned and you and Sunny practice is to continue. And you've developed a very beautiful process around that too, that where you guys clear things out. But through my years of working with people do that also through just going back through, hey, this is what came up here. This is what happened. This is what I felt. And, and people understanding each other. So talking things through in a way where there's no blame, no complaining, and you're not, you're finally figuring out, like you said, if we're really going to be on each other's team, then we have to talk these things through. We've got to really see when these breakdowns happen, we've got to clean those up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much here. There's so many levels and layers, and it can feel when you're in it in a relationship, especially if there are a lot of breakdowns and a lot of stuff is built up, that it can feel like a mountain, right? Just like, oh my gosh, there's so much here. Or maybe some of you are listening that maybe you're not at that point. Maybe you have a lot that's working in your relationship, or you haven't been together all that long, but you're listening and you're going, I don't want to get there, right? I don't want things to build up or fester, or to not have the tools to deal with things as they arise. Because when you're spending, potentially your life with someone, if it is that kind of partnership, or at least a long period of time, it's like you're in with each other every single day. Things are going to come up. Life is going to happen. There's going to be a lot. And like you said, the tools are relatively simple. They're simpler than you might think, but they do take time to practice and to master. So I want to get into one of those skills here, but I do also want to say that we have a program coming out right now it's 2024, almost October 2024, a program coming out that I'm so excited about because this is Gigi's, again, just one of her absolute areas of genius. And I want it in the hands of every single person in relationship. And it's called The Way of Growing Love. And for those of you, you might be listening to this and you're not in a relationship too, there will be a module in there for people who are single and looking for love on finding love, kind of a bonus module. But either way, listening and learning this full tool set, so to speak, like really understanding different skills you can use, tools that you can use. What do you do when conflict arises? How do you approach your relationship differently? What are some of those differences between men and women in general, right? Speaking in generalizations, but still really powerful. Even in same-sex relationships, there's usually a more masculine and more feminine energy, right? So same thing there. And so really taking you through step by step by step over the course of, I think it's an 8-module program that you can just put in your headphones and listen to while you're in the car. So I just want to mention that we're going to be running it live in the Collective, which is our membership program, our monthly membership program. So you can go to www.wayofthemuse.com/collective if you're listening to this, sometime near when we ran the episode live. But if it's later than that and you're curious about this program, we will be putting it up as a kind of self-study program you can go through on your own time. So you can always email us at support@wayofthemuse.com, support@wayofthemuse.com, and just say, I'm curious about the Way of Growing Love, and we can send you the link and you can check that out. So just to mention, because as you can tell from what we're talking about here, there's a lot here and so many different skills and tools and topics that we could go into. But the one I really want to share today is acknowledgement, because this is one of your foundational tools. And like many of them, it seems so simple that people, I think, will go, yeah, I don't know, like that's not, I do that, right? Or that's not going to make a difference. But when people go out and they practice it, they're like, oh my gosh, this changed everything. So can you just share a little bit about how would someone approach or begin to use this skill of acknowledgement? What's it all about?
Yeah, I think a simple way is focusing on what's working instead of what's not working, if you can think of that. So it's so easy to see what's not working, and our brains are wired to see what's not working. And so it's shifting to what's working. And this is in all of your relationships. So let's take, for example, if you're in a partnership, it's a man and woman relationship. You're the woman, there's man. And in that, you want to shift to this kind of pattern of communication. What you'll do is start to notice the thing that your partner does that really contribute to you, to your life, to your children. And you'll want to describe that in words, verbally, and let them know how you appreciate that. And it's very different than a compliment, because a compliment is, oh, I really love you, you're great, or oh, you're a great dad, or oh, you're a great husband. But here's the thing is, he doesn't know how he's a good dad or a good husband. So you describe very specifically, I so appreciate that you're such a great man that, when I want to travel and do other things, you're so accepting of it, and you help out with the kids, and it makes me feel so supported. Or I love it when on Saturday you get up and you take care of the kids and I get to sleep in. I just feel like, so incredibly grateful that my partner loves and cares for me that much to give me that time. So both of those, you've got to find your words and be specific. Maybe Makena can share some that she does, but it's specific and it's how they contribute. So it's not just great job. It's very, very specific to the person, because when you do this, the person really feels seen. They're like, wow, that's amazing. Nobody has ever described me like that before. And it feels so good. And the other thing that happens over time is when you start practicing acknowledgement, people learn from you. And I've had this numerous times. Then your partner will turn around and start acknowledging you because you're actually teaching them a pattern of communication. It feels so good. They're like, I'm going to try this too. And you'll see them start to do it. Same thing with your children. You know, I have clients for years and years, and they'll start with their little kids and do this, their little ones. And then before long, the little kids will be acknowledging mommy and daddy too. So it's super simple and very powerful.
Yeah. And you don't even have to tell them that you're doing it. In fact, we recommend you don't.
Yeah.
They'll just naturally start to pick up on it over time. And another example might be, you know, it could be something specific they do in the moment. Like, thank you so much for taking out the trash. That really helps me that I don't even have to think about it, that you take it out, you know, every week or whatever and bring it to the curb. And it's not my favorite thing to do. And I just really appreciate that you do that for us as a family. And you just take that on. Or, you know, that you took our dog to the vet the other day, and, you know, whatever it might be. So something that they've done that's really contributed in some way. And so you want to, like Gigi said, I want to go back to this thing of noticing what's working instead of what's not working, because that's part of the skill, but it's almost like the precursor. It's the first part. I love when you share this with people, because most of the time when people come in and they have stuff around their relationship, they're sharing all the problems, all the issues, all the things they want to change. And I've heard you tell people, go out for 30 days. And the first thing you do is only notice what's the other person does that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's just like a, what? That's another one of those light bulb moments where you're like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Because when you do that, it'll change the dynamic. The person will naturally start doing more and more of the things that work. And your perspective is going to shift. It's, you know, you'll quit seeing all the things they're doing. It will start to change the relationship. And often it will start to change how the person is, how your partner is, how they show up, because of the way that you are seeing. You've had a perspective shift. Yeah. Is there something else you want me to touch on there?
I was just looking for the quote. When you change the way you look at things, the way you look at the things you look at change. That's right. Wayne Dyer. Okay. Right. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's Wayne Dyer. It just popped into my head when you were talking, which is like, people think, oh, what's that going to do? But if you change the way you look at your relationship or your partner or your boss or your kid or whoever it is, and really focus for 30 days only on what's working. It doesn't mean the other things, like you said, go away or don't need to be addressed. Some of them may still be there and need to be addressed at a later time, but some of them will just disappear or change on their own sometimes because the way you are approaching things is different. There's a dynamic going on in the relationship, and this starts to shift that dynamic. And then it's to start to say verbally out loud, to verbally acknowledge some of those things, right? And share them with your significant other or whoever it might be.
Yeah. And you want to be careful. You don't go in and start overdoing it, you know, because that's not, you just find those moments where, because we think them, that's the thing I always share, is we think those things in our head. Oh my gosh, I have such a great husband, you know, whatever it is. And we don't say it out loud. So here you start to actually say it out loud, say it to the person. And like I said, get more and more specific, because the more specific you get, the more it lands, the more they feel good. And some people say, you know, it's funny, when I used to work in Germany way back in the early 90s, they would go, that's manipulation. It's not manipulation. It's not, you're not doing it to try to get somebody to do something. You are honestly, you want to acknowledge the things that are real, the things that really you feel you appreciate. So that's super important.
Yeah. And this is a foundational skill, right? We wanted to teach you one of the foundational skills here in the podcast, that you have something you can go out and apply right away. And that starts to set the tone for a different kind of tone in your dynamic, in your relationships. And then this is a great one to practice in general, but then also if you are going to come in and do some additional training and learn some of these other more advanced skills that can really support you around around conflict or around areas where maybe you guys aren't quite on the same page, or where you want to deepen, or you want more intimacy, or you want more time with each other. If these kinds of things are coming up for you, there are more advanced skills, but this one always helps. It's always a foundational piece. And so whether you come in and do the Way of Growing Love with us or something else or not, apply this one and do it for 30 days. You're going to see huge, huge changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a fun one. And do it with your children, do it with your boss, do it with everyone. You'll just be like, oh my gosh. Yeah. This is easy. At first, some people feel really awkward doing it. I will say that.
Yeah.
They're just like, I don't do this, And if you feel like that, I would say still try it. You can start in little baby steps. And because you will begin to get better and better at it. Again, communication is so often unconscious. And that's the thing that we teach and I teach is how do you start being consciously aware of how you're communicating and then also the impact that you have, because that's huge. We don't understand our impact. And when you start to learn and you have this awareness of using acknowledgement and then using in such a way that the impact you see is super positive, it uplifts people, it brings them up, then you can use this, everywhere in your life.
Yeah. And in my opinion, it's one of the most important things you can do for your health, for your happiness, for your success. Because think about, again, when you have conflict in your relationships or there are breakdowns or whatever that might be, how does that impact your health? How does that impact your sense of well-being, your energy and inspiration to get out there and create in the world in terms of your business or your career? Or how does that impact your finances, right? How much money you make because you're always distracted over here. You have this pressure, you have this, like, what would be possible if that were all turned around, right? If you really had this connection where there was so much peace, depth, intimacy, harmony. And to me, I always describe it as a battery pack. Like, my relationship is like a battery pack that fuels the rest of my life. I feel so energized within it. And of course, we have our breakdowns and we have our arguments sometimes and different things that come up. But because we have tools to move through them quickly, they don't take us out of the game. They don't distract us for months and months on end and become these much bigger things. And so that's really what we want for you that are listening, is that you really can come to this place where your relationships, romantic and otherwise, are these energizing things as much as they can be, right? That you really have at least a level of peace and harmony there.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you're curious again about the Way of Growing Love, we're running it live in the collective, wayofthemuse.com/collective. That membership, which includes live calls every other week, is only $197 a month. So it's a really, really great deal. It's a 2-month program, so you can come and do that. Or if you're listening to this at a later date, we'll have it up for you to go through at your own pace, and you can email us at support@wayofthemuse.com. So thank you for listening. Go out and practice this skill. Let us know how it goes. We'd love to hear from you. And Gigi, thank you for sharing your wisdom here.
Yeah, thanks for listening. See you next time.
All right, everyone. See you next time.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.